Hello and welcome back to Chapter 7 of Infinite Dendrogram. Chapter 7, The Ordeal of Ruki. In the royal capital Altea, in front of the Adventurers Guild, Paladin Ray Starling. After we had taken the quest at the Adventurers Guild and began getting ready to go to Gideon, Rook spoke up and raised his right hand. You can leave the means of travel to me. There was a pale, gem-like object on his hand. Well, what's that? It's a jewel. An item where you keep your monsters. It's the reward I got from my modeling. Rook began explaining. In the process, he also answered a certain question I had while looking at his skills. Being a pimp, he had a skill that strengthens his underlings, and seeing that he had made me curious about what happened to them outside of battle. Since we were players, we would return to reality every now and then. Thus, I wondered what his little minions would do while we were away. I was saddened by the very idea of a player who stopped playing after having left some monsters or slaves in a cage or something. Such problems were solved by the jewels, such as the one Rook had. Jewels were basically the animal version of the item boxes we always used. It allowed the storage of any underlings you owned, and it was possible to set it so that time inside wouldn't flow at all. The storage would work even while the player was logged out, and if they didn't log in for 2 months or of real time or half a year of game time, the jewels would automatically release the creatures inside. I see. Having underlings in such a realistic world would be really difficult without these things. Well, there was a need to feed and have them rest outside the jewel, but that was all part and parcel of being an underling owner. It was also possible to make the time inside the jewel go on as normal. Logging out while the underlings were released was an option too. However, while being outside, the underlings could always get into some sort of trouble. So whether it would be done or not depended entirely on the owner. So, you already have a monster in there, huh? I asked as I pointed at the jewel. Yes. Mr. Grazian told me to choose one reward for helping out of a few, but since I had a skill that strengthened monsters, I chose this one. Pimp was a job that had a low combat ability, but compensated for it with the use of monsters. So that had been the right choice to make, honestly. Let me show you. Oh, Marilyn! Following his words, and a unique roar, the jewel began to shine. Moo! And sure enough, a monster named Marilyn appeared before us, but... Marilyn? I raised an eyebrow. It was arguable whether the name Marilyn was appropriate. A succinct description of Marilyn would go as such. A triceratops pulling a carriage. Its gigantic body was covered in a blue solid shell, while its back and shoulders could easily be compared to heavy armor. The very real horns on its heads were intimidating enough to make me feel as though they could topple the castle walls. It was far too obvious that the monster was stronger than us. Thing could even put up a fight against a demi-dragon worm. Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if it came out on top. This is Marilyn, a tri-horn demi-dragon. The dragon carriage came as a bonus. Demi-dragon? Seriously? It actually is on the same tier as the worms then. The name has some serious power behind it apparently. I was momentarily taken aback by the fact that you could get such a thing as a reward, but since the difficulty of the quest had been higher than the average where I'd saved Milian, it wasn't that strange. Why Marilyn, though? It's a girl, so I named her after a famous actress. I see, it's a girl, huh? I guess it's all fine then, I thought. Marilyn Monroe might or might not be turning in her grave right now. Wow, what a sight! Though something this strong might exceed your minion capacity. Minion capacity? Oh, let me explain it then. Mary reached into her item box, took out a sketchbook-like item, and began her explanation while drawing something on it. Sketchbook? Why does she even have something like that? Is it because she's a journalist? First of all, in Infinite Dendrogram, the maximum number of people you can fit in a party is 6. Mary finished drawing and showed us the row. Little chibi versions of me, Rook, and herself. All the detail on them made the drawing seem strangely high quality. In our case, 3 of those slots are already taken. Now, the other 3 slots can be taken by tamed monsters or guardian-type embryos. Mary added chibi versions of Bobby and Marilyn. So, you say they can be taken. Does that mean it's possible to make the monsters fight without doing that? Yes, it's possible to not count them as party members and instead treat them as an extension of the owner's power. That's where minion capacity comes in. Under Rook's picture, Mary drew a small tree diagram that led to Babby and Marilyn. With this method, they won't use party slots, but there is a limit to it. Minion capacity is basically the name for that limit. I see. Open your status screen and look at the additional entries. I did as she'd said and took a look at the auxiliary screen. Sure enough, I saw an entry that said minion capacity 0 out of 50. Is this it? Yes, monsters that fit the capacity can be used as part of your own power. The amount of the capacity taken depends entirely on the individual monster. For example, a level 1 little goblin would take 1 point. Well, I mean, I could control a total of 50 level 1 little goblins. A nice number, but questionable overall. I could just picture them all getting blown away by a single area attack. My capacity is 500, so I can own 500 of them. That's 10 times more than mine. A pimp is a job with high capacity. Though, Ray, since your job is in the night grouping, you will have to use mounts, so I think your average capacity is above the high rank class average. Mounts, huh? I should get one of those someday. Anyways, I see how it works now. If it was impossible to call your monsters without using party slots, jobs such as Tamer and Pimp, both of which had low base fighting ability, would have a hard time getting into parties. With the use of capacity instead, they could count their monsters as part of their own power, making them no worse, if not better than any other job. But what happens if you exceed the capacity? You get a limit on your abilities and stop gaining XP. That's quite a huge demerit. Miss Marilyn here is too much for your capacity, Rook. Demi-dragons are strong and have a cost that represent that. If I had to choose between fighting 500 little goblins or 1 demi-dragon worm, I'd pick the former without a moment's hesitation. That's just how much stronger the latter option is. With that in mind, let's place Marilyn in the party. There aren't many of us, so we have some free slots after all. Hey, I have a question. What's my cost? An embryo's cost is always 0. If it weren't, then masters who evolve guardian-type embryos wouldn't be able to draw out their full potential. Well, that's true. Well, that sure took a while to explain. Now let's return to the matter at hand. By riding Marilyn's dragon carriage, we could reach Gideon in about 1 whole day. Well then I guess we'll have to give up on doing it now and depart tomorrow morning. Do you two have any plans? I was referring to real life stuff. Our journey to Gideon would take us a total of 3 days. Which meant that we'd have to dedicate an entire real life day to this. Not really. I'll be free the whole time. Same here. I'm jobless right now. I'm having trouble figuring out if I should laugh at that or not. The next day, we were riding Marilyn's dragon carriage on the road to Gideon. The road was wide enough to let 2 Marilyns ride side by side without any problems. Her size had made me wonder if she would block the road. but my worries seem to have been completely unfounded. Marilyn's walking speed was greater than I'd expected, too. She could pull the dragon carriage uphill without even the slightest drop in speed, which reminded me of four-wheel drive off-road cars. Looks like our journey to Gideon will be smooth. Although we had to take care of the occasional monster attack, it wasn't like we could get there without stopping. However, since we were going through a newbie's hunting ground, the monsters never attacked us in large groups. The most we had to fend off at once was 3. In fact, Rook, Bobby, and I had just defeated such a group. Mary, meanwhile, stayed sitting in the dragon carriage and cheering for us while sipping on some tea. There were things to be said about this setup still. She wasn't doing nothing without reason. Honestly, it was my own fault for not asking her about it beforehand. Journalist wasn't a battle job in any sense of the term. However, Journalist had a characteristic skill called the penny is mightier than the sword, which increased the XP gain of the entire party in exchange for rendering Journalist unable to fight. The skill couldn't be turned off either. With that in mind, it was safe to conclude the Journalists were like a decoration that were of absolutely no use in battle. Sure, I appreciated the bonus XP, and yes, we were going through a newbie's hunting ground, so the enemies weren't something we couldn't handle ourselves. She was also more knowledgeable than us. The advice she gave was useful, and her monster info was accurate. Still, I can't help but feel that... well, whatever. The skill is called the pen is mightier than the sword. So I was expecting it to be an attack with a pen. That saying's meaning isn't physical. Though I wouldn't be surprised if this world had a pen that was stronger than us. All the same, the journey was going smoothly. Due to the XP bonus, both Rick and I had gotten some levels. I was now level 16 while Rick was level 27. The battles were coming and going in a satisfying manner, and it didn't look like we had any trouble with the monsters of this level range. And speaking of no trouble, the mountain pass before us had once been blocked by a bear-like monster. Just from appearance alone, it had seemed like the boss monster of this area. However, before we could even begin our fight with it, Marilyn, seemingly angry at it for blocking her way, and defeated the bear as if it wasn't a big deal at all. Rook had retrieved the drops, which had come in a box, so yes, it had been an actual boss monster. The boss's loot was always a welcome thing. However, as a rule of thumb, boss monsters were always the most powerful creatures an area could offer. And it sure didn't seem like that when Marilyn handled them, though. Another thing to note was that most boss monsters were multiple of a kind and took part in the ecosystem. But according to Mary, there were some monsters that were unlike any other. They were called UBMs, unique boss monsters. All of them, without exception, were equipped with special abilities, and some were even powerful enough to eliminate high-ranked parties without much difficulty. However, since they were one of a kind, even encountering them was rare. Once out of the wavy Sauda mountain pass, we entered an area of nothing but wide plains. The area was named Next Fields, and the road leading through it was supposed to take us to Gideon. As we were all thinking just how smooth of a journey this was, something entered our vision. On the road ahead, there were several carriages which looked like they belonged to peddlers. They were all under attack by a throng of goblins that easily numbered more than 100. The goblins in this horde had significantly better physique than the little goblins Rook and I had fought back on Eastern Plains. While the standard little goblin was about half my size, the ones here reached approximately 80%. Not only that, they also wielded swords and bows, and were even clad in proper armor. Some of them were even riding some small monsters resembling carnivorous dinosaurs. The names above them, Goblin Warrior, Goblin Archer, and Goblin Rider, made it all the more obvious that they were superior to the ones we were familiar with, and a proper throng of them were attacking the peddlers' carriages. I could see some Tian-looking people trying to fend them off, but alas, the numbers were against them. That sure is a lot of goblins, and it seems like every single one of them is stronger than the monsters in the mountain pass. What shall we do? Mary evaluated the enemy, asking whether we should join the battle or not. I began to ponder. We were rookies, and calling us strong would be nothing but a mistake. Mary was a veteran, yes, but she couldn't participate in any battles. Not to mention the fact that the opposing force greatly would outnumber us even if she could. We clearly had a low chance of victory. The safest option would be to turn around, retreat to the mountain pass, wait for the goblin horde to go away, and return to the path to Gideon then. However, that would mean leaving the people there for dead. And that would leave a bad taste in my mouth. Rook, Mary, you might get the death penalty and fail the quest because of it, but you guys don't mind that then. Let's do it, Rook said before I could finish. Then he freed Marilyn from the dragon carriage, run them over, and sent her on the goblins. She roared and burst into a dash. Keeping her three horns at the forefront, Marilyn charged into the goblin throng with all she had. Once they noticed the presence of something other than the carriage as their prey, it was already too late. Nearly 14 goblins got pulverized by Marilyn's horns. Let's go, Ray. Marilyn might be strong, but it's still too much for her alone. Yeah. I see. Nemesis seemed to realize something. Just like my unexpectedly fiery master, this Rook fellow seems to have a dangerous side to him too. No fair, Marilyn. I was with him first, so I'm supposed to do the most. Rook, Babby, and I all jumped through the space opened by Marilyn and began fighting the goblins around us. Yeah! I tightened my grip on Nemesis, who was already in her greatsword form, and swung her at the goblin warrior before me with all I had. The blade sank into the top of the warrior's shoulder, but the armor he wore made it stop after going only about 10 centimeters. Yeah! The wound wasn't fatal, so the warrior still tried to swing his weapon at me. Then how about this? I raised my greatsword upwards, lifting the warrior along with it, and quickly swung it down to the ground. The momentum added to my attack made the warrior and his armor split in half. Thanks to levels I'd gained recently, such feats weren't particularly hard for me. But it takes a while to do it, so next time I'll be aiming straight for the neck. What an aggressive battle. It's to my liking. Well, someone seems to be having fun. I find it a bit strange that she can't handle zombies, but she's just fine with all this gore here. Behind you! Whoa! I turned around and swung my greatsword sideways and decapitated the warrior that had tried to attack me from behind. Sadly for him, having Nemesis on my side basically let me see from every direction. Being surrounded wasn't a big problem for me. Who are you people? One of the escorts fighting to protect the carriages exclaimed. I chose to make our explanation succinct. We're masters heading to Gideon. We're here to help. That demi-dragon is with us, so don't attack it. I see, and I will make sure not to harm it then. Thank you for your help. Convinced, he began telling his comrades about us. With that, it was now established who was on whose side. Of course, since the only enemies were goblins and their mounts, simply telling them about Marilyn was more than enough. However, we were still seriously outnumbered. Surrounded by goblins, Marilyn couldn't get enough speed to kill them as quickly as she had at the start. The carriage escorts were doing their best, but it still wasn't enough to make up for the difference in numbers. But suddenly I realized something. Rook and Bobby weren't with us. I looked around and found them both standing in one place. That was all they were doing. Despite all the chaos around them, they were just standing there, back to back. However, they soon began to move. Male, Lilum. Rook extended his right hand while Babby her left. Temptation! And while simultaneously saying that word, they motioned their hands as if beckoning something. The next moment, a particularly fierce female goblin warrior decapitated the goblin next to her. Another one. A goblin archer who seemed to have a commanding role suddenly crushed the head of the mount he was riding on. Is that the goblin's dialogue?
Yeah. One-chan, what did you do? Dancho?
Screams, confusions, and most important of all, chaos began to spread throughout the goblin army. The numbers of victims was increasing by the second, one after another. One after the other, goblins lost their minds and began attacking their own. The charmed goblins weren't attacking those who weren't. Well, the charmed goblins were attacking those who weren't, while those who weren't charmed were hesitant about fighting back and would only get charmed themselves or simply die. The damage done to the horde increased exponentially, and when all the goblins were either dead or charmed, Lilum drain! Bubby started draining the life out of every single charmed goblin. Holy shit, imps are OP. Process made some of them come back to their senses, but just like before, they either got killed by the charmed goblins or simply got charmed again. Itadaki Masu? Considering just how hellish the situation was for the victims, the nonchalance in her voice was quite inappropriate. Nonetheless, those words were what marked the end of the battle. The throng of goblins that had been completely annihilated. Excluding those that had been defeated by me or the carriage escorts, all the goblin corpses had either been killed by their own or sucked dry to the point of making them look like mummies. In contrast to our counterattacks, which are effective against single bosses like those damn centipedes, their abilities are frighteningly good at exterminating large groups of vermin. She was right. Our strengths and theirs were strikingly different in nature. By using charm, Rook and Bobby had created scattered allies in the army ranks that had rendered the enemies unable to focus their attacks and had destroyed any semblance of cooperation they had. As they had been trying to recover from that, the effects of charm had spread and gotten even more of them on Rook's side, the repeating downward spiral. It was a nightmare scenario in any group-based battle. I'm glad he is not our enemy. I couldn't agree more. T and escorts and even peddlers in the carriages were shocked stiff at what Rook and Bobby had just done. That was only natural, of course. We were fully aware that they weren't bad guys. But there was no arguing what they had just done had been downright villainous. Charm was scary, end of discussion. It reminded me of why I was afraid of Rock Bouquet. What is that? Is that a reference? This was the first time I've used it in battle, and I'm very glad it was useful. It wasn't very tasty, but I'm so stuffed right now. The fact they are a master with a low-rank job and his first form embryo make me dread imagining how they'll be in the future. Ah, Rook! I have a new skill! I reached my second form! Really? And that was exactly when I heard them say that. Although her appearance didn't change, this battle, or rather extermination, had caused Babby to evolve. That wasn't unexpected, considering just how many goblins there had been. I looked at Rook's basic stats and saw that he too was quite a bit over level 30 now. I, however, was level 20. Congratulations. Thank you. So, Bobby, what kind of skill did you get? It's called brain learning. Rook took a look at his embryo window and examined the new skill. He let me have a gander too, so I read its description. It said, gives a low 1% chance to learn a random skill from the monsters being drained. Learning, huh? It was much like the blue magic from that famous RPG series. That's a Final Fantasy reference. Basically, allow the users to learn and utilize the skills of enemy monsters. Is that a Final Fantasy X reference specifically? In Bobby's case, the chance of that happening was a mere 1%. However, if my calculations were correct, that means she'd had a greater than 60% chance to get a new skill after draining it 100 times. Since there were no limit to the amount of skills one could have, it had the potential to be an extremely useful ability. I have a feeling she's going to be really formidable in the future. Suddenly, Nemesis sounded a groan that seemed really trouble. What's wrong, Nemesis? I feel like you and I didn't do much compared to them, and I find that a bit troubling. Oh, come on now. No one cares about that. Well, it was true that we hadn't gotten to be particularly valuable players since we defeated that one demi-dragon worm. We'd even died once. Well, then again, if all we ever faced were beasts such as a superior killer or Firo, we would be dying all the time. That's why it was all too bad when we don't get to show off. And so, it was likely unrelated to Nemesis' worries and my sentiments.
Oh.
Something screamed and landed on the goblin corpses littered the battlefield. No, the word landed wasn't appropriate, for it made the action seem soft. Something large, a demon, crashed down on the battlefield. The demon's feet cracked open the ground, making it tremble, and yet the monster itself was unharmed. In awe, I looked up at its daunting appearance. It was monstrous in almost every sense of the word. I lacked the words to describe it. Most of it was brown and black in color, the horn on its head, combined with the stature that surpassed 5 meters in height, made it appear exactly the way I expected a demon to look. However, it had a feature that was wholly unnatural and nothing short of discomforting. It had large mouths on its head and both of its shoulders, all of them with leaking a dark purple smoke, the very sight of which made a cold chill go down my spine. Last but not least, the words Great Miasmic Demon Gardranda were hanging above it. The intimidating presence of this Gardranda, enough to affect our reaction speed. Before we could even realize it raised its right leg, crushed one of the escorts, and followed it up with a punch from its huge fist, directed straight at me.
Counter absorption.
Nemesis spawned a barrier of light just in time to stop Gardranda's fist from hitting me directly, which greatly lowered its damage. Since she had experience in suddenly activating that skill, Nemesis was quick to react. That was about the only good thing about the current situation. This one has more power than those centipedes. So it's actually above the demi-dragon worms, huh? Great Miasmic Demon, Galdranda. This monster had both a title and a name. I've never seen a monster with this kind of presentation before. Wait, wasn't his name on the bounty list Nemesis was reading yesterday? Ray, Rook, be careful! Mary, who was standing outside the battle, suddenly shouted to us, "That's a unique boss monster!" Her warning made me remember a certain bit about the information I'd seen on the wiki. UBM. Just as it said in the name, it was a term that referred to boss monsters who were unique, unlike any other creatures in this world. Standard boss monsters such as the demi-dragon worms often came in groups, but UBMs were different. There was only one of each UBM in the entire world. No current UBMs have ever existed before, and no past UBMs would ever come to it again. All of them, without exception, were really unique and powerful. They were really powerful and came equipped with their own unique abilities, in a way that they were like the masters of the monster faction. Thus, they were several tiers stronger than any monster at the same level. Why would such a monster appear here? I couldn't help but ask. Considering the power of the goblins surrounding us, Vajranda was simply far too powerful to be here. Wait, goblins? I see how it is. This demon is like the ringleader of the goblins. It came out because its subordinates were annihilated. In other words, it had come here because we'd enraged it. However, there was something else on my mind. I shifted my gaze and fell silent. My vision was fixed on a single corpse. It belonged to the carriage escort who had been attacked at the same time I had. It was the same one I had spoken to not long ago. His corpse, the body flattened by the demon, seemed somewhat inauthentic. Obviously, I only felt that way because my experience with destroyed corpses didn't go beyond fiction. However, the extent of this world's realism was great enough to replicate the weight. the gravity of a lost life. I had fought undead before and had caught glimpses of players vanishing into the dusk-filled forestry as they were massacred by the superior killer. In fact, some of the escorts here had died at the hands of the goblins before we joined the battle. However, the one that had gotten pulverized by Gardranda was the person that had died right before my eyes. I was at a loss for words. I didn't know his name, nor was I aware of what kind of person he had been. I even had trouble remembering his face. But I had been talking to him just a short while ago. He was beyond helping now. This world wouldn't allow him to come back. He was simply dead. This'll leave a bad taste in my mouth, I said with a palpable anger in my tone and looked up at the demon's sizable frame. I saw veins popping out and pulsating on its head. No, it wasn't just a head. That was happening on the skin around its shoulder mouths as well. It's releasing some sort of breath! Back away from it! I couldn't tell if her warning came too late or if it happened too fast. With great intensity, Gardranda's mouth simultaneously sprayed out a dark purple smoke. Huh? It was somewhat reminiscent of insecticide. Sprays that instantly killed the irritating, buzzing pests we were all so familiar with. I had used such sprays myself, of course. However, I had never once expected to have someone use something like that on me. Poisonous breath was launched in 3 directions: at me, at Rook and Babby, and at Marilyn and the escort. And it quickly covered us all. The dark purple miasma didn't do any damage at first, however it soon made me go dizzy and forced me to drop to my knees. I looked at the status window, where I saw that I was under the effects of 3 debuffs: poison, intoxication, and weakness. Poison made my health gradually decrease. Intoxication made it hard for me to even stand up, while weakness cut my stats to less than half their original value, making it so that even my gear felt heavy to me. I shifted my gaze and saw that the escorts and peddlers were on the ground as well. Rook, however, was above us. Babby had raised him up before the miasma could reach him. I heard a familiar roar, but it was far weaker than before. Its source was Marilyn. She, too, was under the effects of the miasma's debuffs, and yet she mustered all she had, pushed her feet on the ground, and charged towards Badranda. It was the very same charge that had trampled 14 goblins at once and could instantly pulverize lower-level bosses, and yet... Oh! Badranda stopped it. The demon extended its log-like arms and grabbed on to the outer 2 of Marilyn's 3 horns. Though it was pushed a few meters back, Badranda's was able to stop Marilyn's, a demi-dragon's charge. Then the demon added a bit more power. Yeah! And threw Marilyn into the air. Drawing an arc through the air, and the several tons beast flew about 10 meters before hitting the ground with an unpleasantly strong sound. Marilyn! Rook seemed slightly panicked. Marilyn released a weak sound. With all the damage from the fall and all the debuffs weighing her down, it was obvious that she was at her limit. Recall! Rook's words made her return to the jewel. Time stopped for the animals within it, so Marilyn was safe for now. It's not working! Bobby had been trying to use Temptation on Gardranda for a while now, but since the demon's level MP and SP was so high, Charm simply had no effect. Suitability, huh? Rook and Bobby weren't cut off for boss battles. If there was anyone who was, however. Master! In response to Nemesis' shout, I shifted my attention back to Gardranda. As I knelt there, barely immobile due to all the debuffs, the demon swung its right hand at me as if crushing a fly. Don't underestimate me! I forced my heavy body to move, swung Nemesis into Gardranda's palm. Vengeance is mine! And activated the skill the very moment the sword landed. Damage from the nullified god Drando's punch mixed with the HP I'd lost to poison got doubled and made the demon's right hand burst. The attack tore the palm apart and made 3 of the fingers fly straight off. Godrando screamed in agony, but the damage I'd done was low, since the damage I'd accumulated from Godrando was at that point hadn't been particularly great. Vengeance's mind hadn't done that much damage either. Also, the attack on the palm had used up all the damage I accumulated by then. To use another Vengeance's mind, I'd have to accumulate damage all over again. Following the attack, I swung Nemesis once again and launched a standard attack. However, it was a few tiers weaker than it usually was and had none of its usual brilliance. The reason for that was obvious. The debuffs were still affecting my body. The great miasmic demon, Gadranda, had both the physical power to let it throw something as heavy as Marilyn and the ability to weaken its opponents in 3 different ways. The gradual HP reduction from poison wasn't much of a problem as long as I made sure to observe the HP bar. However, intoxication paralyzed the semicircular canals and thus negatively affected my ability to control my body, while weakness cut my stats by more than 50% and turned the whole basic fighting into a struggle. This is bad. Damn it. My chances were low even without these debuffs. Suddenly Mary called to me from behind. Ray! I turned around expecting her to warn me about something and instead got a glass bottle to hit me right in the face and shatter. Gah! Master! Nemesis was confused as well as the impact made me throw my head backwards. I got showered by the bottle shards and content. My pain settings were set to off, so it didn't hurt at all, but I couldn't help but wonder what had brought this about. Mary had the stance of a pitcher who had just thrown a ball, so it was pretty obvious that she had been one who threw it. As I was about to yell at her for messing around during a battle, I noticed something. I'm healed and the debuffs are gone. My HP was at 100%, and the 3 status effects were no longer on my status window. What is this? It's the elixir I had prepared just in case. With this, you should be immune to disease-based debuffs for the next 180 seconds. However, I don't have a spare, so use it well. Elixir? Well, that's what it was in the bottle, huh? Apparently it's quite a powerful drug, however, with this. Looks like we're at our best again. Indeed. With no debuffs hindering us, this Gargandra is the equivalent to one of those damn centipedes. Except with hair. With my current HP and defense, I could bear the demon's attacks, and if I could bear them, I had a chance of winning. For the poison, for Marilyn, and for those who died. You'll get what's coming to you, damn demon bastard! I brandished Nemesis and charged towards Gadranda. The elixir's effects would last for another 154 seconds. That was the amount of time I had before I returned to being vulnerable to Gargandra's miasma and the 3 debuffs again. Thus, I had to settle it before that time expired. I held the greatsword aloft and swung it at Gagranda's knees. It cut through his skin and spilt some blood, but the wound wasn't deep in the slightest. I thought a bit through, though it bit through the skin and sunk into the muscle, it wasn't even close to reaching the bone. Even when I was at my best, my standard attacks weren't good enough to do any proper damage to him. My strength wasn't particularly great, and though Nemesis might have been a great weapon when I had been level 1, she was among the weaker ones now that I was level 20. If I tried to beat it with just my standard attacks, not even 1,500 seconds would be enough, let alone 150. However... Gadranda retaliated with a kick, and I chose to let it hit me. I got blasted away about 7 meters, but I was able to make a smooth landing. Though it sent me flying, the attack didn't hurt me at all that much. The damage it did was about 600. That was only approximately a quarter of my total HP. I was level 20. With the bonus HP I'd gotten from leveling up while being a paladin, the bonus from my embryo, and the skill HP increase, my total HP had been 2,500. One of my skills, Paladin's Aegis, reduced all incoming damage, and my equipment was far better than it had been when I fought the Demi-Dragon Worm. Thus, a creature that had hit a little bit harder than that the Nem could never kill me in one hit. And if I couldn't die from one hit, I had the means to earn victory.
First heal.
I ran while casting my healing spell on myself and complemented it with the use of one of my heal potions. With that, my HP was almost back to full. Then I simply repeated what I'd done before. Attack, get hit, heal. I merely had to repeat this for those 150 seconds. This was my only chance at winning. One repetition took about 20 seconds and got me 600 damage, which became 660 when I considered the damage nullified by Paladin's Aegis. I could do it a total of 7 times and gather 4,620 damage. Vengeance is mine could double that amount and damage for 9,240. You survived getting that hit on your head, you damn demon. That is our only Master! As I calculated the remaining time of damage I could gather, Nemesis called out to me. Being familiar with her tones, I instantly knew that it was a warning. Look above! I quickly did as she told me. In the sky, hazy with Gandrandra's miasma. Kya! Is it a bird? Kya! I saw a large crimson bird of prey as it dove towards me at high speed and readied its talons. Whoa. Whoa! I hastily jumped to the side, making the crimson gust go by me. Seemingly annoyed due to failing to grab me, the bird of prey flapped its wings once and suddenly rose back up into the sky. Before it completely got away, I caught a glimpse of the name displayed above it. Crimson Rockbird, Mount Owner. Great Miasmic Demon. Gandranda. A mountain? The description made me realize something. When Gandranda had come here, he'd simply fallen from the sky. However, the demon had no means of falling or jumping particularly high, and these flat plains didn't have any places that could give it the necessary height to make such an entrance. Thus, there had only been one reasonable explanation. Gandranda had been brought here by something that could fly, and that something had been hanging above us ever since we'd started this battle. This is bad. This is not good. I was no longer able to focus on Gandranda. The bird's speed and physique made it obvious that it was quite a powerful monster. If I had to guess, I'd assume it was just as strong, if not stronger than the demi-dragon worms. It could even grab me with its talons and drop me from a great height, rendering me completely unable to fight back. The bird was a dangerous enemy indeed. However, if I kept focusing on trying to avoid it, the elixir's effects would wear off and I'd no longer have any means of achieving victory. What do I do? Ray! Before I could figure out how to handle a new enemy, we'll take care of the rock bird. I can fly, so just leave it to me. You can focus on Gargandra, Ray. But Rook and Bobby couldn't do anything against a monster that powerful. It was probably immune to their charm skills. Before I could tell them, Rook spoke up. We'll buy time until you defeat Gargantua. Yeah, so don't worry about us. Holding Rook, Babby rose up and flew towards the rock bird. I silently watched them. Master, you are not thinking of letting their conviction go to waste, are you? Like hell. I brandished Nemesis and once again ran towards Gandranda. The reason why I could continue fighting was because Mary had used her elixir on me. Yeah, as if I somehow forgot that. The reason why I could focus on the fight was because Rook and Babby were holding back Rockbird. Nemesis and I weren't alone in this battle. It was like the time we'd been killed by the superior killer. We were fighting as a party. 57 seconds left. By lowering our focus on healing, we can do this 3, preferably 4 times. Let it be done then. We ran, attacked Gandranda, got hit back, stood up, and ran again. It was not to waste the opportunity our comrades had given us and to uplift our chances of victory. I didn't care how tattered I would become doing this. Nemesis! Soon enough, we only had 10 seconds left. Accumulated damage! 4,973. We can do this, Master! Everything slotted into place when Gadranda hit us for the final time. I had less than half of my total HP, but I could still move. All that was left was to hit the demon with vengeance is mine. I dashed towards Gadranda with the sole purpose of landing this lethal hit. 7 seconds left. 6 seconds left. 5 seconds left. 4 seconds. We only had a few more steps to take until the demon was in our range. That was the moment when the mouth of the head opened wide and released a crimson-red flame. It wasn't the miasma this time. This breath was meant purely to damage anyone it touched. All this time, Gadranda has been hiding his trump card from us, and there was no way I could survive a direct hit from those flames. However, take it all! Counter-absorption! Barrier of light summoned by Nemesis stopped the purgatorial fire and absorbed the damage it did. Vengeance is mine! The attacks carrying the doubled weight of the damage from Gadrandra's hit and fire completely pulverized the demon's head and ended its life. Or so it seemed. The loss of its head made Gadrandra turn silent, however its body continued moving around and attacking me as though it was only natural. Huh? Despite losing its head and brain, Gadranda swung its left arm at me, making it obvious that it simply didn't care for the damage I'd done. And I, fresh out of my means of defense and tired due to having just used my most intense attack yet, was unable to evade the demon's arm. It hit me head on, sent me flying and had me slipping on the ground for about 10 meters after landing. However, likely because Gadranda has lost its head, the damage it done wasn't as great as before, and it didn't kill me. First, heal. I stumbled to my feet while casting healing magic on myself. However, the time was up. 180 seconds had passed since I had been put under the effects of the elixir, and the effects were now gone. The air around me was still thick with Gargandra's miasma, so I was instantly put under the effects of all 3 debuffs. It couldn't even fight properly in this state, yet the demon was still perfectly fine. At least he can't see without his head. My thought was cut short. Just how much of a monster are you? I yelled, not expecting an answer. On both of Gadranda's shoulders, right above the mouths, appeared a gory orb, obviously an eye. It didn't seem like the shoulder's eyes worked yet, but it was clear that they'd soon again vision and let the demon see and kill me without much trouble. Why is this happening? We clearly destroyed it! Shouted Nemesis in confusion. Our vengeance is mine. Attack had created an explosion with Gadrandra's head at its center. Naturally, the head was gone without a trace, and even its chest had a hole carved out of it in a semicircular shape. It looks like we even got its heart, and yet... Heart? I felt something off about my words. That word in particular suddenly came back to me. I controlled my hands. Shaking due to intoxication, went to my menu and opened my memo window. There I found the memo saying, "Well, the demon's heart lies in its stomach. Cheshire." So that's what that meant. Master, Cheshire's words fit the description perfectly. The situation perfectly. The cat had probably known I'd be facing Gargandra the moment I'd said I was heading to Gideon. Cheshire had given me those words just in case I got into a situation such as this one. Gadrandra's heart, the core that governed all of its life's functions, was neither in the head nor in the chest, but the stomach. Thus Gadrandra wouldn't die until said heart was crushed. To this demon, head was nothing but another means of attacking. Even if I destroyed the remaining faces on the shoulders, Gadrandra would continue to move as long as the core in its stomach was intact. My previous attack should have been aimed at the stomach instead of the head. But even if I figured that out, I'm all out of power to... Like hell. Out of power? Who gives a damn? Rook and Babby were still holding back the Rockbird, therefore I, who had been entrusted with the role of defeating Gandandra, had no business giving up while they continued to struggle. Not yet. I couldn't get up. I couldn't give up. Even if I couldn't move, or if my stats were brought down to the gutter, giving up simply wasn't an option. I had to bear through it all as long as I could and land another hit on Gandrandra's stomach. It wasn't a matter of whether I could or couldn't. My friends had given me this role, they'd entrusted it to me, thus I would do it even if it meant breaking through my limits. I would grab hold of the chance of victory. If I can't do that much, I can't even dream of getting my revenge against a superior killer. Despite being on the verge of defeat, I gathered my resolve. Master! Nemesis? The odds are against us, but it's not over yet. You don't mind continuing this, right? That goes without saying, however, that's not what I want to say. What? What do you make of this? On the corner of the windows I had opened, there was an unfamiliar red window. Master's life in danger. Master's life endangerment confirmed. Master's intent to live confirmed. Embryo type maiden, maiden of vengeance, nemesis, accumulated XP, green. Blank execution available. Preparing blank activation. If you wish to cancel, please do so in the next 20 seconds. Do you wish to cancel? Yes or no? What is this? Nemesis? I addressed her, hoping for an explanation. I know nothing of it either. What is this? The window was red, making it seem much like a warning. From the text, it was obvious that it was related to Nemesis, however, the most important part of it seemed to be corrupted. No, my head couldn't even process it as proper language. What exactly did it mean? I silently watched as the counter's timer continued to go down. When it hit 10 seconds, I began to worry and reached towards the window with the intention to stop it. But before I could complete the motion, Gargandra's shoulder's eyes became able to see, and the demon charged at me while roaring from its shoulder mouths. By now, of all times. The timer on the red window before me was going down as Gargandra got closer to me by the second. I was left with no choice but to ignore the window and face the demon. However, with weakness reducing my stats and intoxication making it hard for me to move, banishing Nemesis was all I could do. I have to use my defense and healing to create another opportunity to use vengeance as minded. Countdown complete. Acknowledgement intent to initiate the emergency evolution process via blank protocol. Examining the 172 patterns made available by the accumulated XP and calculating the optimal solution to the current situation. Target embryo, maidens of vengeance, nemesis. Initiating emergency evolution via blank. To reduce load, the interval until the next evolution will be extended. Right after I saw that message, Nemesis lost her physical integrity and was reduced to floating particles. Huh? That was the exact same phenomenon that had always happened whenever Nemesis transformed from her human form to her greatsword form. This time, however, she neither returned to her humanoid shape, nor did she become a sword again. Instead, the particles whirled around my surroundings. I became unable to process the situation. Gadranda only continued to get closer to me. Blank complete. Not giving me a moment to understand anything, the window output displayed a new line. Form 2, the flag halberd. Nemesis's particles whirled around me and began to gather in my hand. After having turned to floating grains of light, Nemesis returned to me in a completely different form than before. Jump, Master! It was her voice. I hastily listened to what she had said, kicked my feet off the ground, and left Gargandra a long distance away from me. Huh? A voice of surprise escaped my lips. Before I realized it, I had jumped a whole 20 meters. The surprise was aimed at both my unbelievable jumping power and the fact that Nemesis wasn't human, nor was she a greatsword. She was a spear. Though, since she had an axe popping out from one end of her grip, the word halberd was more apt. The part opposite of the axe blade was leaving a trail of black light, making the whole of her look somewhat like a battle flag. I looked at the equipment window and I saw the name The Flag Halberd. Nemesis, what happened to you? I couldn't help but ask. I'm not sure I'm able to answer that question. I happened to become like this before I could even realize it. I guess she was unconscious while she was turned into particles. However, there is one thing I'm certain of. Oh, and that is, I've evolved into my second form. The power inside me is greater than ever. Evolution. That was the primary feature of every embryo. The function that gave them powers from infinite patterns. The red window had also something about emergency evolution. Is that how it normally goes? I didn't seem that way in Rook's Bobby evolved though. Well, this ain't the best time to think about this anyway. I had to focus on only one thing right now. After having lost sight of me once, Garanda noticed me again and roared with both of its shoulder mouths. By the way, Nemesis, what is it, Master? You said your power is greater than ever. To what extent, though? I could almost see her put up an intrepid smile. Enough to make it possible for us to defeat that damn demon. Perfect. The possibility was there. The fact that she had only said that it was possible made me remember the first time we'd met. However, that was all I really needed. The possibility of us winning was there. Then, for the sake of Rook, Bobby, Mary, and the teens in danger of dying, we only had to bet on that possibility and give it all we had. Let's do this, Gardrandra. Since Gardrandra's appearance after we annihilated the goblins, the demon had possessed the upper hand. It had even been able to corner us after getting its head smashed, but now we hit a new way of achieving victory. I know how you work. I'll end it soon. I brandished their flag halberd above my head and roared at the headless demon. This is the final round! After spinning the halberd above my head, I charged at Garanda. The weakness was supposed to have lowered my stats. I was running much faster than I could have run while in my normal state. And though intoxication was supposed to be making my vision turn dim, I felt like I could perceive far more than I ever could. Garanda attacked me with a swing from its right arm, the one with fewer fingers in the hand. But I was able to smoothly evade it and sink the halberd's axe into the demon's wrist as I did so. My attack bit through the skin, sunk into the meat, and cleared its bone. I cleanly cut the demon's hand off, causing crimson blood to burst from the wound. We're doing well. It was obvious that her evolution had improved Nemesis' stats and bonuses, but the difference between this and her previous form were just too great. Yeah, I think we can handle this. Oh wait. I thought and I remembered something. I was still under the effects of poison. If I'm not careful, my HP will decrease a whole lot and... Huh? We're doing way too well. The poison was supposedly to be gradually lowering my HP. It was actually going up. The increase in my physical ability, the clarity in my sensation, and the continuous HP regeneration, it was as though the debuffs had been reversed. I see, so this is your... Indeed, this is my new skill. Like a flag flying, the reversal. Nemesis opened a window that showed me the skill's names and described what it did. Basically, it reversed the effects of debuffs received from an opponent. Wow, that's convenient. Instead of dealing continuous damage, poison healed me. Instead of lowering my stats, a weakness increased them. Instead of paralyzing my senses, intoxication made them clearer. Like a flag flying, the reversal was a buff skill that had reversed all and any afflictions that affected me. It's quite the ideal for the situation. It honestly seems like a bit overly convenient. Well, you're not wrong there. However, according to the message on that red window, out of the possibilities available to her, Nemesis had been equipped with the optimal solution. However, that message had merely described what happened. For some reason or another, I was convinced that I was the one who summoned this result. Regardless, this skill made it possible for me to find a way out of the situation. It was much like the first time Nemesis and I had met. Thus, for now, I'm betting it all on this possibility. Then we are of the same mind. Nemesis and I released a battle cry as I made my way through Godranda's arm attacks and continued chopping away at the demon. The 3 debuffs it had given me had originally been simply the worst. However, now they were making me stronger and closing the power gap between me and Godranda. I was effectively buffed with HP recovery, perception, and physical strengthening, while the demon had lost its head and practically had its miasma ability completely negated. Our power balance was now equal. No, in fact, it had been reversed. Seeming upset at this turnaround, Godranda began randomly releasing miasma in every direction. However, to me and Nemesis, these fumes were nothing but a smokescreen. As Godranda continued to release the miasma, I pierced into its stomach. The flag halberd dug through the demon's meat and touched a weak spot, the core within it. Godranda roared out in anguish. That was proof enough that the stomach was where I had to aim. However, it's regenerating! The wound I had just given it disappeared with the dark purple smoke. It appears that only the weak spot is protected by regeneration. That means it'd take us forever to defeat it if we only relied on weak attacks. It's not like we can keep fighting for particularly long anyway. I knew exactly what Nemesis meant by that. Due to the effects of like a flag flying the reversal, my HP was continuously regenerating. However, my SP only continued to decrease. That was the cost of keeping the skill active. Compared to my HP, my SP wasn't particularly high. It wouldn't last for long, thus I had to figure out what I had to do to win. Upon considering the regenerating core, the limited amount of time and our abilities, there was only one answer. I have to stop evading and simply let him hit me. Nothing else would work. I would accumulate the damage the demon did to me and hit it with another vengeance as mine. This time, however, I would go straight to the weak spot in the stomach. There's something to keep in mind, though. What is it? This form doesn't allow the use of counter-absorption and vengeance as mine. We're already out of absorption uses anyway. No. My evolution increased its stock to 3, so there's one more to use left. However, just as reversal can only be used by the flag halberd, those two can only be used when I'm in my greatsword form. Basically, to use vengeance in mine, I had to change the flag halberd into the greatsword. That meant losing the effects of like a flag flying the reversal. To be able to land a clean hit, lethal hit, while under the effects of the debuffs, I had to kill its mobility. Nemesis, let's go for the legs. Understood. I swung the flag halberd and repeatedly damaged Godranda's ankles. The demon retaliated with swings from its arms, but I simply let them hit me. Naturally, I got damaged, but the reversed poison quickly healed me back to full health. Things were going much like they had when I had been under the effects of the elixir, except, thanks to the continuous regeneration, I could attack, get hit, and heal much more smoothly than before. 3,250. 3,784. As I listened to Nemesis speak the amount of damage I had gathered, I looked at the edge of my status window and checked on my SP. 53. 52. The amount of time I could keep the reversal active was already below 1 minute. 4,265. Master! Alright, I'm betting it all on this. I dashed through the miasma, which was nothing but a smokescreen to me. Dove right next to where Godranda was standing, gathered my resolve, and horizontally swung the flag halberd at the demon's legs. Both of its tendons had been severely damaged by my attacks up to that point, and with that deadly swing, the axe head split them both apart. Godranda screamed and fell to its knees, making the ground tremble. Do it now, Nemesis! Form shift, Black Blade. A command made the flag halberd lose its integrity and scatter into particles of light, which which soon gathered once more to create the familiar black greatsword. At that very moment, I was put under the effects of the 3 debuffs, however, it didn't matter anymore. I only had to land my final attack. As my legs were shaking due to intoxication, I danced towards the demon. Gardrando was still kneeling, and when I raised my sword and ready to strike, I noticed something. The dark purple miasma smokescreen was hindering my vision. However, it did nothing to hide the fact that both of the demon's shoulders were emitting a bright red light. Deadly flames. They were limited to the head I destroyed. Gardrando could release them from his shoulder mounts too. However, I refused to stop. Counter-absorption! Nemesis spawned the third barrier of light, the one she'd gained from evolving. It stopped the flames and absorbed the damage they were meant to do. Though it was unnecessary, that made the damage I'd accumulated reach the greatest amount ever. I couldn't be more certain that I had had it in the bag. Now, Master, once I passed the flames, the barrier of light dispersed. Finally, I managed to swing my sword at Gargandra's stomach. And was suddenly faced with the demon's left shoulder mouth, ready to spit more fire. What? Huh? Nemesis exclaimed as we realized that Gardrando had actually learned something from the battle up till now. The demon had used the lethal flames from both its shoulder mouths separately, just for the sake of getting past Nemesis's counter-absorption. All of the miasma it had previously released hadn't been meaningless either. It was the preparatory action meant to render us unable to see that the demon had separated the flame bursts. Master! I was already swinging the sword. The blade was slicing through the air for the sole purpose of striking Gardrandra's stomach with vengeance's mine. Even with the debuffs, I could land the hit in a mere 3 seconds, however, the demonic flames would reach me faster. As if on the verge of death, I began seeing the world in slow motion. The left shoulder mouth opened wide and was about to bathe me in flames. But before I could do so, something resembling a bullet broke through the miasma veil and hit Gardrandra's left shoulder. The familiar object exploded in the demon's left shoulder. When caught in the burst, blew up before it could release its fires. The moment the heat waves caressed my cheeks. Vengeance is mine! Nemesis and I shouted the name of the skill, landed the hit on Gardrandra's stomach and pulverized its core.